The moment the war stops, Netanyahu will come under an enormous amount of pressure for having let Israel's guard down on October the 7th. Army will come under pressure and they'll be asked to explain why there were so few brigades protecting Israel's southern border. If Netanyahu loses power, his legal position, because this case against him for bribery and corruption is continuing, would come back into play. So there are two totally different forces at work, for both of whom a continuation of a war is the only practical outcome. It isn't an easy prospect to have the leadership to say, I'm now going to stop this war and I'm going to start negotiations. Israel's not in a position to do that. And Netanyahu is not in a position to do that. So I think he's finished. He's shameless. His aim is to carry the war on for as long as possible.
Our security and the prospects of peace in the Middle East depend on one thing: total victory over Hamas. And only continued military pressure will bring home the remaining hostages.
The other ferment going on inside Israel is the debate between the families of the hostages and the Netanyahu government, but also the extreme right ministers. And it's clear from what they've said that they think the hostages are as good as dead.
Families of hostages held by Hamas, they gathered today to protest the Gaza invasion. Take a listen.
We have to engage in negotiations. We have to do it now. They say that the only solution is to destroy, to flatten Gaza. They never mentioned the hostages, never.
We are afraid for our hostages, our family. We want to bring them home alive.
But the extreme right actually aren't that interested in getting Israelis back. They are far more attuned to what was called the Hannibal Directive, where the Israeli army targets an area in which a hostage has been taken so that everyone dies and there are no hostages. Either they prefer deaths, Israeli deaths, to Israeli hostages.
We need to look at the euphoria with these hostage releases with a grain of salt. What Hamas wants us to do is they want to divide the country into people whose priority is releasing the hostages through deals, people like me and the other part of the country whose priority is to obliterate Gaza and reconquer it, even at the expense of the hostages.
They wanted the war to carry on. They were always against even the one ceasefire that was arranged between Israel and Hamas. Followed no logic at all. They said that the hostages had more chance of being released because they were putting pressure on Hamas through their bombing campaign. The exact opposite has happened. You don't pressurize Hamas by bombing it. You negotiate with Hamas and then you get your hostage release. But I think whatever happens, world opinion is changing. It's not changing in Israel or America's favor. While Israel has always prided itself on making sure that the elites, the political elites, the party leader, future party leaders, the opposition, anyone who wants to be serious in Western politics has to get on side with Israel first. Or the fate of Jeremy Corbyn hangs high over the alternative. You'll be accused of being anti-Semitic. That's basically what you toe the line, you say what we want you to say, or we'll accuse you, or we'll get someone to accuse you of anti-Semitism. That's as crude as it has become. But that's not working anymore. I'm very pleased to say it isn't working, because there are millions and millions of people out there who are not party of the conflict, who simply say, no, this is not right. This is what Israel is doing is absolutely not right. And Israel's using hugely in the court of world opinion. It's a small country. It wants to be a Western nation. Its citizens want to travel. It wants to trade. And all of this is working against its own interests. Before October the 6th, the Palestinian cause was gone. You had Netanyahu waving a map of Israel in the United Nations General Assembly, which didn't have any Palestinian territory in it at all. It was all belonged to Israel. And the Palestinians had lost. People were talking over their heads about a direct deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And look what's happened now. It's totally different. No one's now talking about the Abraham Accords. They're talking about the Palestinian cause. They're talking about the need for a Palestinian state. Even Lord Cameron, our British Foreign Secretary, is talking about the need for a Palestinian state. So this war really has stripped everything back. It's shaken the rust off this vehicle. And it's now back to the bare metal again. We're in a very, very interesting place at the moment, because the central problem is absolutely right there in front of everyone's noses. It is a Palestinian people that have been chased and shot and bullied off their lands. This land has to be shared. How you do it is up to negotiations, but this land has to be shared. and Jews and Arabs have to regard itself as equals, and that's plainly not happening now. And so it has done a huge boost to the Palestinian cause. But I'm not certain that the bloodshed is over, and I'm not sure that anyone has actually learned the lessons from this. But there's a big, big lesson there in neon flashing lights about how this conflict should now be ended. What's been really important in the coverage of this awful conflict is the role that independent media have played, that Middle East Eye have played, and Double Down. I would urge you all to support that media, because that's the media that is actually going to do the real reporting in the war. Support Double Down News on Patreon, and do read Middle East Eye.